Usually, when we look at character design in gaming like, say, a custom Pokemon gym leader or something, there is this incredibly rigid expectation of, just surface level aesthetics.
Oh, yeah, completely. It's all about the look.
Right. The developer gives a character like spiky blue hair, maybe drapes him in this oversized parka with a snowflake motif, hands them a team of ice-themed monsters, and just points at the screen saying, there it is. That's your ice-type leader. It's just visual shorthand.
It is entirely superficial. I mean,
Yeah.
we are culturally conditioned to like things that can be easily categorized by their outward appearance, especially in games.
Yeah,
You see ice, you expect cold, maybe aloof dialogue, and a very straightforward, aggressive battle strategy.
But so when you sent us the source document for today's deep dive, which, by the way, is this highly detailed PDF, just simply titled Tommy's Pokemon Notes.pdf, that whole superficial aesthetic expectation was just immediately shattered.
Yeah, it really throws that out the window.
It really does. What you've handed us isn't just some character profile or a fan-made concept. It is a staggering, multi-layered masterclass in psychological depth.
It's honestly incredible.
So today, our mission for this deep dive is to explore the journey of Tommy, who is this ice-type gym leader from Lacunosa Town. We are going to trace his evolution from a frightened observer hiding behind a wall to this rigorous scientist and ultimately unpack how his deeply personal worldview, which was, forged by trauma and curiosity, manifests into a devastatingly effective, psychological, competitive game strategy.
It is a remarkable translation of narrative philosophy into literal game mechanics. Like, the notes detail someone who isn't just using elements for flavor, he's using them as a framework to understand human behavior and, well, systemic control.
So let's set the scene a bit, using the context provided in your document. We start in Lacunosa Town, and this isn't just your standard, chilly, picturesque village. It is a settlement built entirely around a single, uncompromising ideology, which is when the cold comes, you stay inside.
Right, you lock the doors.
Exactly. Every single night, they shut these massive gates, they dim the windows, their conversations, they quiet down to whispers. And they do this out of pure, unadulterated fear of Kyurem, this creature that roams the chasm beyond the walls.
Yeah.
To the people of Lacunosa, Kyurem is not just a powerful Pokemon.
No, not at all.
It is a warning. It's a boundary line.
Yeah.
It is a mandated reason to just not ask questions about the world outside.
The town has essentially institutionalized avoidance. I mean, they have created this collective culture of hiding from what they do not understand. Their entire societal identity is defined defensively. It's defined by what they are desperately trying to keep out rather than, what they're trying to build within.
So Tommy is different.
Yeah.
While everyone else is cowering in their basements from the night, Tommy is actually studying it.
He's paying attention.
Right. He doesn't go outside immediately, but he watches from the windows. He climbs up to the rooftops. He starts noticing the fractal frost patterns on the glass. He observes how ambient sound carries differently when the barometric pressure drops.
Which is such a specific detail.
It really is. And he notices how absolute stillness makes all the microscopic details of the environment louder. He doesn't see the cold as this malicious danger. He sees it as a consistent, beautiful, overarching system.
Which is a profound cognitive shift for a child raised in that kind of environment. I mean, he is actively reframing a mythological threat into an objective object of study. He is basically removing the emotion from the environment.
And then comes the catalyst. During a particularly harsh, blinding cold snap, Tommy spots something unusual at the edge of town, right at that safety line where the light from the street lamps fades into the chasm. It's a Piplup.
Yeah, a tiny penguin Pokemon.
Exactly, a small, exhausted Pokemon. But it's not running away, and it's not trying to breach the walls to hide. It is just standing there in the blizzard.
Oh.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Imagine you live your whole life in a town where everyone locks themselves in a reinforced bunker during a storm.
Right.
You are the only one looking out the reinforced glass, fascinated by the structural physics of the lightning. Then suddenly you see someone else standing out in the pouring rain, completely out of their element, physically maladapted to the environment, but just flat out refusing to fall down. How does a creature fundamentally unsuited for the tundra become the entire foundation of an ice-type philosophy?
What's fascinating here is the concept of dignity under pressure. The source notes make it very clear Piplup, by its very biology, did not belong at the frozen edge of Lacunosa. It was completely out of its depth.
Yeah.
But it refused to collapse. Tommy didn't look at it and see recklessness, nor did he see the town's trademark fear. He saw a creature enduring a hostile system through sheer structural discipline.
And what's wild is that the notes specify he didn't catch it in the traditional, throwing a Pokeball from the bushes kind of sense. He just walked out and stood with it.
Precisely. They formed a partnership through shared stillness, just two beings in the freezing dark, neither of whom were fully understood by their surrounding environment. And that Piplup became a living proof of concept for Tommy's emerging philosophy. It proved his core thesis, which is, you do not need to inherently belong to a system to master it.
Right, because Piplup eventually evolves into Empoleon.
Exactly. The rigid, steel-clad Empoleon. It proves that internal structure and discipline can overcome external environmental hostility.
So Piplup basically changes his entire paradigm. It's his first successful experiment. But to truly test this philosophy, Tommy realizes that just observing from the safety of a second-story window isn't generating enough data anymore. He has to literally step outside his comfort zone.
Which brings us to the pivotal night. He finally crosses the boundary. The town seals itself up, as it always does. The locks turn, but Tommy steps quietly beyond the walls with his partner, and he finally encounters the monster.
He meets Kyurem.
And
the discovery he makes is shocking. Like, Kyurem wasn't chaotic. It wasn't this roaring dragon full of rage and malice. It was, as the notes describe it, absence.
This absence, yeah.
A localized drop in temperature, a presence defined entirely by what was missing, like heat, energy, completion.
It's a brilliant subversion of the monster trope, really. The terrifying entity isn't inherently evil, it's merely an environmental void.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I want to quote directly from the notes here.
Yeah.
Tommy realizes the monster wasn't evil. It was a system missing pieces, just like unfinished ideas. The cold wasn't hostile, it just was. But hold on, I have to push back on Tommy's reaction here. Because if he suddenly has this grand, life-altering epiphany that Kyurem isn't a threat and that the cold isn't inherently malicious, why doesn't he march right back into Lacunosa Town?
Oh.
Like, why not bang on the mayor's door, dismantle the town's mythology, and tell them they don't have to be afraid anymore? Why does he become an exile? Doesn't isolating himself just replicate the exact same closed-door system he just left?
I see why it looks like hypocrisy on the surface, I really do. But Tommy understands a fundamental truth about sociology here.
Yeah.
Lacunosa is a closed system. You cannot cure a town's generational institutionalized trauma by simply walking in and telling them the monster is just physics. They lack the framework to understand it.
No, that makes sense. They wouldn't even believe him.
Exactly. Furthermore, Tommy realizes he cannot fully comprehend his own environment if he has nothing to compare it to. He doesn't leave to run away, and he doesn't leave to conquer gyms for glory. He leaves as a scientist gathering data. To truly understand the cold, he needs contrast.
Ah, so he recognizes that he's still ignorant. He has to step completely outside the experiment to identify the variables.
Exactly. You cannot truly understand the quirks of your own culture or the architecture of your own hometown until you immerse yourself in a completely alien one.
Right.
Tommy needs to observe contrasting, warmer systems to finalize his theories about environment, structure, and behavior.
Okay, let's look at the evolutionary leaps he makes on this journey, because he doesn't just catch Pokemon to build a roster. He shifts paradigms. He goes through these distinct research phases that your document outlines.
Yes, the phases are fascinating.
Right. So in phase 2, he encounters Glaceon. But Tommy isn't fascinated by the biological adaptation of an Eevee to the ice. He's fascinated by its behavioral economy. Glaceon waits. It observes. It drops its core temperature and only acts when the energy expenditure is mathematically necessary. This teaches Tommy that efficiency isn't about speed or striking first. It's about timing.
Glaceon basically becomes his model for controlled, deliberate action. It's the execution phase of his philosophy.
But then we hit phase 3, and his research moves from biology into pure theory. He starts studying geometry, symmetry, and crystalline structures, which leads him to cryogonal. Now, cryogonal is a literal snowflake.
Yeah, quite literally.
It isn't emotional. It operates on mathematical logic. It proves to Tommy that some entities aren't animals, they are literal equations. But I'm struggling with this leap. How do you go from observing an animal's timing to treating a living creature like a math equation? Doesn't that directly contradict his empathy for the Piplup? It feels almost, sociopathic to strip away all emotion like that.
It seems like a cold contradiction, I grant you that, but it's actually an evolution of his detachment. To understand the underlying systems of the world, Tommy feels he has to strip away biological and emotional bias.
Okay.
Cryogonal doesn't act on instinct, fear, or loyalty. It operates on pure algorithmic logic. Tommy is trying to map the environment, and you cannot accurately map a system if you are projecting human emotions onto it. He is trying to view the world in binary to see its true structure.
Wow. Okay, so he achieves this total analytical detachment. But then phase 4 hits, and the notes say he starts struggling with creative burnout. With unfinished ideas that never fully form, he hits a wall.
Which is inevitable when you rely purely on logic.
Right, and that's when he meets Froslass. Froslass is described as beautiful, fleeting, and highly unpredictable. It represents ephemeral creation. Through Froslass, Tommy learns a harsh truth. Not all creations are meant to last. He learns to stop chasing mathematical perfection and start accepting entropy and impermanence.
Look at the deeply nuanced worldview he is building here. He has synthesized behavioral timing from Glaceon, abstract pattern recognition from Cryogonal, and the emotional acceptance of impermanence from Froslass. It is a highly ordered, albeit delicate, philosophy.
Which is exactly why Phase 5 is so incredibly jarring. Out of nowhere, he enters these technological digital environments, and he encounters Porygon-Z.
The glitch.
Yes. Porygon-Z is a normal type. It is highly unstable. It is illogical. It is a literal digital glitch vibrating with corrupt code. So what does this all mean? How on earth does a chaotic, glitching software program fit into a rigid mathematical philosophy built on the stillness of ice types?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Porygon-Z is the breakthrough that shatters his previous limitations. Up until now, Tommy's entire system has been about control, stillness, and order. He was trying to perfect the structure.
Right.
But Porygon-Z proves that not all systems need stability to be effective. Chaos isn't a failure of the system. Chaos is just unrefined structure.
Chaos is just unrefined structure that completely recontextualizes the glitch.
It is a massive paradigm shift. But he can only safely accept this chaos because of his anger.
Ah, Empoleon.
Exactly. Throughout all of these phases, the abstraction, the impermanence, the glitching chaos, Empoleon has remained at his side. Empoleon represents unyielding discipline and grounded execution.
Yeah.
The core realization Tommy has here is that exploration needs structure, or it completely collapses into madness. Empoleon is the stabilizing force that allows Tommy to harness the chaos of Porygon-Z without losing his own mind.
It's exactly like writing complex software code. You can test the absolute limits of a chaotic experimental program like Porygon-Z, pushing it until it almost breaks, but you can only do that if you're running it on a rock-solid, predictable operating system like Empoleon that won't crash when you push those boundaries.
That is a perfect analogy.
And with this fully formed philosophy embracing both order and chaos, anchored by discipline, Tommy is finally ready. He returns to the closed, heavy doors of Lacunosa Town. But he's not the frightened boy observing from the window anymore. He is a master of systems.
He returns and faces Kyurem again. But this time there is no fear, and there is no mere observation. It's true understanding. Wow. He looks at the monster and realizes that Kyurem isn't broken. It is just what remains when something is incomplete. And he assumes the role of gym leader not to hand out badges, but to teach this exact perspective to anyone who challenges him. His famous declaration to the region is so telling. They close their doors to survive the cold. I open mine to understand it.
That is such a powerful manifesto. But this brings us to the ultimate application of this deep dive. Let's look at the actual competitive metadata you included in these notes. How does this beautiful philosophical laboratory actually translate into game mechanics? Because Tommy's philosophy manifests into a competitive team known among challengers as the Machine.
Machine, yes.
And frankly, looking at the turn-by-turn flowchart, it is an operational flowchart of misery.
It really is. It is a perfect translation of narrative dread into strategic reality. The team is built around hazard stacking and momentum denial. It is designed from the ground up to psychologically punish every possible decision the opponent attempts to make.
Let's break down the suffocating synergy of this team. First, we have Froslass, functioning as the opening gambit. Froslass enters the field and immediately sets up spikes, littering the opponent's side with hazards. Simultaneously, it stops the opponent from executing their own opening strategies by using taunt.
So it's controlling the board instantly.
Instantly. And because Froslass represents ephemeral creation, the philosophical acceptance that things aren't meant to last, its ultimate move is Destiny Bond. When it's about to be defeated, it triggers a state where if the opponent knocks it out, the opponent goes down with it. It literally trades its life one for one just to maintain tempo control.
It perfectly sets the pressure foundation for the entire match. Before the opponent even realizes what is happening, they are forced into a terrible tactical bind right from the very first turn.
Right. Because the moment Froslass secures that trade and the spikes are locked in, Tommy brings in Empoleon, the anchor. Empoleon sets up Stealth Rock, adding a second layer of hazards to the field. And then it uses Roar.
Oh, that's brutal.
Instead of fighting directly, it leverages its defensive bulk to roar at the opponent, mechanically forcing the opponent's active Pokémon back into their Pokéball and dragging a random one out. It literally drags the opponent's entire roster forcefully through the spikes and the rocks, racking up guaranteed unavoidable damage.
All while acting as the defensive backbone. Empoleon's typing perfectly covers the team's natural structural weaknesses, absorbing hits that would otherwise shatter the ice types. It provides the stability Tommy needs to keep the system running.
Then you transition to Glaceon and Cryogonal, acting as the observers and the system. Glaceon leverages its massive special attack to force the opponent into retreating even more, meaning they take even more hazard damage upon switching.
Right, because they can't afford to stay in.
Exactly. Glaceon even utilizes Freeze Dry, a unique move that unexpectedly deletes opposing water types, punishing the opponent for assuming they had a safe type advantage. Meanwhile, Cryogonal sits there with mathematical calm. It utilizes Rapid Spin to safely sweep away any hazards the opponent managed to set on Tommy's side of the field, and it uses Haze to instantly erase any stat boost the opponent tries to build up.
Cryogonal ensures Tommy's system remains completely pristine and mathematically perfect, while simultaneously ensuring the opponent's system slowly degrades into uselessness. If the opponent tries to build momentum, Haze just zeroes it out.
And once the opponent's team is battered, bleeding from hazards, and completely softened up, we introduce the Fracture and the Glitch. Kyurem steps onto the field mid to late game to completely crack open the opponent's defensive cores. Its coverage is devastating. And finally, Porygon-Z.
The cleanup crew.
Exactly. By this point, the opponent is weak, panicked, and making tactical mistakes out of desperation. Porygon-Z enters, uses Nasty Quat to violently boost its own power, and simply sweeps whatever's left on the board. I have to tell you, mapping out this flow of battle, it's not aggressive. There's no sirey, overwhelming assault. It's entirely reactive and controlling. It's like being trapped in a room with a collapsing ceiling. Every single move you make to try and escape only makes the walls close in faster.
This raises an important question regarding game theory, really. How do we define victory? For a vast majority of players, victory is about hitting hard, moving fast, and depleting a health bar. But the real win condition of Tommy's team isn't actually knocking out the opponent's Pokémon. No. The true win condition is inflicting decision paralysis.
Decision paralysis.
Yeah.
So the player themselves freezes, not just the avatar.
Yes. The opponent looks at the field and does the math. They realize, I can't set up my strategy because of Taunt and Haze. I can't switch my Pokemon out to safety because of the spikes and Stealth Rock damage. And I can't leave my current Pokemon in because of the overwhelming defensive pressure and Destiny Bond.
They're trapped.
They are completely stripped of agency. The strategy perfectly mirrors the existential identity of the cold itself. It is slow at first, almost imperceptible. You think you can handle it. You think you have a jacket. And then suddenly, before you even realize what's happening, absolutely everything is frozen. It is inevitable.
It is absolute genius. And for you listening to this deep dive right now, the relevance of this document goes so far beyond a theoretical game mechanic. Whether you are building a competitive gaming team or trying to manage a complex multi-tiered project at work, or honestly just trying to navigate your way through a chaotic, unpredictable daily life, Tommy's notes ask a profoundly challenging question. When you are faced with the unknown, when the temperature drops, the variables shift, and things get scary, do you lock your doors and build a wall like the people of Lacunosa Town? Or do you climb up to the roof, detach yourself from the fear, study the frost patterns, and build a system to understand it?
It is fundamentally a question of how we choose to engage with our own fear. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today, something that builds on Tommy's ultimate realization.
Yeah, please.
He recognized that Kyurem, the terrifying monster outside the gates, the entity that shaped an entire society's trauma, was simply something that was incomplete. I encourage you to look at the monsters in your own life. Think about the massive looming projects you are dreading, the interpersonal problems that seem completely chaotic, the systems at work or in society that frighten you because you just don't understand them. What if they aren't inherently hostile? What if they are not out to destroy you? What if they are simply incomplete systems just waiting for you to have the patience to observe them and find the missing pieces?
That is definitely something to think about. Thank you for sending us this incredible document and for joining us for this deep dive into Tommy's notes.
Yeah.
We started by talking about how easy it is to look at character design, or really anything in life, and just see the superficial aesthetic, the spiky hair and the ice motif. But as we've seen today, there is always a deeper structure, a complex psychological architecture waiting to be found beneath the surface if you just have the patience and the courage to step outside the wall and observe it.